Throughout the Advent season, we will be reading from the book of the prophet Isaiah, who was speaking to a world in travail, a community who had been taken into exile, a community that was trying to find a place to set their foot. A community that was longing for a world made new. These words, ever ancient, come to us afresh. The word that Isaiah saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem: in days to come, the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established as the highest of the mountains, and shall be raised above the hills, and all nations shall stream to it. Many people shall come and say, "Come, let us go to the mountain of the Lord, that he may teach us his ways, and that we may walk in his paths. He shall judge between the nations and shall arbitrate for many peoples. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore." And I'm going to read from the first chapter of the book of Matthew. The scribe, who was later given the name Matthew, was writing at about 85 AD, that's after the death of Jesus, and he was writing primarily to a community that was was still living within the Jewish traditions. And he was attempting to ground the prophet, the mystic, the teacher, Jesus, very firmly within the Jewish lineage. It's one of those passages that I won't read the whole thing. I'll read the important bits. But let me assure you, there are some very important bits in here. Important bits because it reminds us that Jesus' lineage was not picture perfect by any means, but that he comes from a group of men who were rascals at best, abusers at worst, and a group of women in a patriarchal society who, because of the rules not meant to support them, had to become prostitutes, had to become mistresses, seductresses. There's one more I'm missing. We'll talk about it later. An account of the genealogy of Jesus, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac, and Isaac the father of Jacob, and Jacob the father of Judah and his brothers. And Judah the father of Perez and Zerah by Tamar, and Perez the father of Hezron, and Hezron the father of Aram, and Aram the father of Abinadab, and Aminadab the father of Nashon, and Nashon the father of Salmon, and Salmon the father of Boaz by Rahab, and Boaz the father of Obed by Ruth, and Obed the father of Jesse, and Jesse the father of King David, and David was the father of Solomon by the wife of Uriah, and so on and so forth. And Josiah, the father of Jeconiah and his brothers at the time of the deportation of Babylon, and Jacob, the father of Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom Jesus was born. There's always a story behind the story. And Matthew is insisting that we're not going to sweep any of those stories under the carpet as we introduce the story of Jesus. So, behind me is an illustration. It is by an artist named Anne Voskamp. And these four women are Tamar, Rahab, Ruth, and Bathsheba. And they are all scandalous women. The story of Tamar you're going to find in the book of Genesis. So Tamar was married to the oldest son of Judah, who was the son of Jacob, who was the son of Isaac, who was the son of Abraham. Her husband died, and by law, Judah's next brother was required to take Tamar as his wife. But he had this hunch that, in fact, she was responsible for his death, and so he agreed to sleep with her, but in such a way as that she would not get pregnant. So you can figure that out, right? Because he didn't actually want to be stuck with her. Well, he died too, and there was one more brother left, and that brother was only 5 years old. And so Judah said to Tamar, "Off you go, back to your families. We don't need you here anymore." Tamar, of course, felt ashamed and betrayed. She got word that, in fact, her former father-in-law was going to be visiting her community one day. And so she dressed herself as a prostitute. She hung out at the town gates. And by that time, Judah's wife had already died, so he saw this prostitute and he sent for her. And he said, "I will send you a kid when I get back to my community, but in the meantime, you may have my ring and a piece of my robe as a sign that I will promise you payment." So he went back to his community and sent one of his servants with a kid back to pay her, but nobody knew who she was because there wasn't a prostitute at the gate. He later got wind that she was pregnant, 3 months pregnant, and he then was about to have her stoned because, in his mind, she had committed adultery. Yet when he brought her to him, she showed his ring and the piece of his robe as a sign that, in fact, he had been the father. Rahab was a prostitute within the walls of the city of Jericho when Joshua, leading the people of Israel, was supposed to overtake it. She made an alliance with him and said, "In exchange for my safety and my family's safety, I will provide you with information that you need in order to take over this city." Rahab, a prostitute and a foreigner, comes to the rescue of the people of Israel. A little further down is Ruth. We remember Ruth fondly, don't we? We don't remember that Ruth was part of any sexual scandal. And you really don't want me to tell you that she was either, do you? Because we want to remember Ruth as the daughter-in-law of Naomi, the one who, when Naomi's husband and 2 sons-in-law died, Ruth, the foreigner from Moab, said, "Don't worry, I will look after you. I will return with you to your homeland. I will make sure that you as a widow are cared for and accompanied. And then even I had, wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you die, I will die," on the bulletin when I got married. It's a lovely, lovely line. So Ruth and Naomi make it back to Israel, and they're still 2 helpless women without men. So they need a plan if they were going to survive. So a distant relative of Naomi's is a man named Boaz who owns a farm. And another tradition within that community was you couldn't harvest every single iota of your crop because you needed to leave a portion for the needy and the poor so that they could glean from the fields after you had taken off your share of the harvest. So one night, Boaz was sleeping near his fields, and Ruth was sent by Naomi to kind of just sneak underneath his blanket. And so when he awoke in the morning, he didn't remember and wanted to be an honorable man, so he immediately took Ruth as his wife. And Ruth was the grandfather of David, right? But the story keeps going. We know about this one. We know about the story of David, right? who is at war with somebody, and his head general Uriah is out fighting on his behalf. And he sees Uriah's wife bathing on the roof, Bathsheba, so beautiful. And David's the king, so he can take everything, can't he? And so he takes Bathsheba. And it just gets messy. Bathsheba gets pregnant. Okay, he's the king. He can make this work. He calls Uriah back from the front, sends him home to sleep with his wife, and let's just get this over with. But Uriah is a faithful general, and he refuses to leave David's side because that is his first commitment. Well, David then is left with having to have his most famous general killed. Sends him to the front of battle, ensures that he will not live to see his home again. 4 women that Matthew includes in this genealogy. I think the message is clear. We have Tamar, the abandoned one, Rahab, the prostitute and the foreigner, Ruth, the foreigner and the seductress, and Bathsheba, the victim of sexual assault. Yet Matthew tells us that each one of these women are responsible for carrying forth the intention of God. They are given central place in sacred history. And what that suggests to me is if they have, say, a central place in sacred history, then each of us does as well. So here's the invitation this morning. We are called to take our place in this genealogy, in this lineage of scandalous women or rascally men, though that's kind. Are we prepared, like Mary, to say yes? Yes, I will make room in my life for hope to be born. I will bear the one called Emmanuel, which means God with us. Can we hear the hope for the world in this lineage? The invitation to forsake our fears about our own inadequacies, an invitation to overlook our own failings, to get beyond our own history, and to stand with grace and courage alongside those throughout the ages who were invited to give birth to the sacred story.